Angel Reese fires back at Caitlin Clark obsession, league tension rising. Is it possible that the WNBA's biggest surge in popularity could also lead to its biggest downfall? For years, the Women's National Basketball Association existed, in a quiet corner of sports culture, loved by a small but loyal fan base. Then, seemingly overnight, a tidal wave of new viewers arrived, some drawn by sensational college talents like Caitlin Clark, others curious to watch a league that had never been under such a bright spotlight. And with all those new eyeballs came new scrutiny, fresh controversies, and an avalanche of heated debates on social media. The real question now is whether the WNBA can withstand this sudden shift or if it's standing on a precipice ready to crack. A sudden spotlight. The WNBA has fought long and hard for recognition, often overshadowed by its far larger brother league, the NBA. There were years when mainstream coverage was minimal, games might only appear on niche networks, and attendance numbers stayed modest. But something changed when the 2023 NCAA Women's Tournament brought unstoppable forces onto the court, including the sharpshooting phenomenon known as Caitlin Clark. Suddenly, fans who'd never paid attention before had every reason to tune. Intercollegiate performances shattered viewership records and got more people than ever asking, what comes next for these stars? Naturally, curiosity funneled right into the WNBA. Supporters of longtime players like Diana Taurasi or Sue Bird felt both excitement and apprehension about the possibility of their beloved league exploding in popularity. They wanted recognition for women's basketball as a whole, but perhaps didn't anticipate the wave of new personalities who treat sports the same way they do the NBA, full of outspoken fan opinions, harsh Twitter critiques, and trash talk fueled by viral highlights. With more fans comes more noise, and in traditional sports culture, that noise includes everything from playful banter to biting criticism. But was the WNBA ready for that level of attention? It quickly became clear that some of its stars weren't used to the blunt honesty that pro athletes in men's leagues receive daily. As the season inched forward, tensions started bubbling. Old guard fans wanted the same respectful tone they'd seen for years, whereas these new faces didn't hesitate to challenge players who underperformed or said something controversial. That's when the drama escalated into the realm of social media warfare. Still, that was only the beginning of a firestorm that would soon overshadow more uplifting storylines, such as record-breaking performances and heartfelt outreach programs. The next stage featured two names at the center of it all: Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark. Controversies. That sparked chaos. The world first became enthralled by Caitlin Clark's uncanny ability to shoot from anywhere on the court, and Angel Reese's unwavering confidence and big-time performances. Their run-ins during college ball set the stage for a showdown that felt more personal than any typical sports rivalry. After the NCAA season, fans followed them like hawks, where they'd land, who they'd call out, how they'd address critics. And once the WNBA started welcoming these players, or at least preparing to, media outlets sniffed controversy in the air, fueling rumors and opinions that sometimes overshadowed actual gameplay. One focal point was the perception that, as a white athlete, Clark was lionized by mainstream networks. Angel Reese, who is black, supposedly didn't receive the same level of broad adulation, even though she led her team to victories just as monumental. Some saw it purely as star power attracting eyeballs. Clark's half-court bombs and triple-doubles were historically compelling. Others insisted that social biases played a role in who got the lion's share of the spotlight. These debates couldn't be contained. What started as sports commentary turned into a cultural battleground where tweets and posts ran wild. Clark fans were adamant that race had nothing to do with it. Reese supporters claimed it had everything to do with it. As watchers chose sides, the WNBA found itself receiving more coverage in a single offseason than it had in years. But attention isn't always positive. Some players bristled at the nature of the commentary, calling certain feedback intrusive, disrespectful, or downright hateful. The rivalry that had once entertained fans morphed into an uproar about justice, race, and representation. Social media pages, especially those dedicated to women's basketball, became hot zones for exchanging sharp opinions. With every new interview snippet, the conversation reignited. But nothing fanned the flames quite like one rising star's candid remarks about dealing with so-called trolls. Social media. Strife Shakira. Austin isn't the first WNBA player to be vocal on social platforms, but she might be one of the more direct. She openly called out naysayers, labeling them as trolls and attributing negative feedback to ignorance. In her eyes, these new detractors weren't fans at all. They were agitators with no respect for women's hoops or for players who'd been grinding away long before the mainstream spotlight arrived. For a section of fans, her words felt justified. They believe that for too long, female athletes have been disrespected or dismissed. To these supporters, calling out that kind of attitude was not just necessary, it was overdue. But to another sector, particularly the brand new wave of viewers, used to trash talk in every other sport, these comments sounded like a refusal to accept legitimate criticism. It wasn't uncommon to see tweets saying, "Welcome to real pro sports. This is normal. If you can't handle it, that's on you." At the same time, some WNBA veterans felt conflicted. They appreciated Austin's passion for standing up against hateful remarks, but they also recognized that casual fans often come with strong opinions. In the men's leagues, the loudest critics have been around forever, and those leagues still thrive. The shift in the WNBA demanded an adjustment period for everyone. From the players on the court to the fans on social media, all of these tensions left the league's public image in flux. On one hand, more interest means more potential revenue, sponsorships, and coverage. On the other, if the conversation focuses on name-calling and bridging cultural divides, it risks overshadowing the actual game. While some pinned their hopes on young stars to unify fans, the ongoing arguments seemed to show no sign of slowing, especially when further stirred by players' honest yet polarizing comments. Shakira Austin's backstory. Before all the buzz, Austin was best known to devoted women's basketball followers as a formidable center with impressive stats and a bright future. Averaging close to double-digit points and pulling down significant rebounds, she showed glimpses of greatness. She could dominate the paint and even step outside for mid-range jumpers, immediately drawing the attention of analysts who wondered if she was poised for stardom in the pros. Beyond the court, Austin involved herself in brand partnerships, including a promotional deal that highlighted her dedication to overcoming physical and mental challenges. She championed wellness and empowerment. This positive image garnered respect among many fans, until her outspoken takes on the so-called new wave of critics overshadowed that narrative. Suddenly, the conversation was less about her game and more about whether she was alienating the very audience the league needed. What made Austin's remarks even more potent was the timing. The WNBA was fresh off an uptick in viewership, primarily fueled by curiosity about the Angel Reese versus Caitlin Clark storyline. Any comments about fans being ignorant or trolling were bound to ignite debate, considering how many newcomers were still deciding whether to become long-term supporters. While some people cheered her bravery for speaking out, others bristled at the possibility of being lumped into the category of ignorant trolls simply for asking tough questions about players' performance. The immediate fallout was a social media war of words. Some pledged to support Austin more passionately than ever. Others threatened to boycott games featuring players who couldn't handle critique. As the dust settled, it became clear the WNBA had found itself center stage in an intense collision between sporting tradition and evolving social attitudes, and it was all playing out in real time. Deeper layers, race and representation. The tension between old fans and new fans runs deeper than just sports. In a society already fraught with questions about racial justice and equal representation, the Reese versus Clark debate added fuel to an existing fire. Critics claim the press elevated Clark into a superstar because she fit a traditional mold that the media was comfortable celebrating. Fans of Reese argued that, despite her stellar performances, the coverage was diluted by undercurrents of bias. From an outside perspective, this might look like a typical narrative: two highly skilled athletes from different backgrounds commanding the spotlight. But in the WNBA, representation has always been a sensitive topic. The league prides itself on diversity, advocacy, and inclusivity. So to see arguments breaking out along racial lines felt like a betrayal of the very values many fans held dear. Meanwhile, the league's leadership tried to strike a balance, celebrating both Clark and Reese, insisting there was room for every star to shine. Yet the chatter continued online, feeding into broader questions about how women's sports are covered. Why did some highlight reels fixate on one player over another? Were certain interviews engineered to stoke conflict? And how did the media narrative about Black female athletes differ from those about white ones? people on social platforms weighed in relentlessly, sometimes overshadowing what happened on the court itself. Most heartbreakingly for some longtime WNBA supporters, the joyous atmosphere of an expanding audience got tainted by these polarizing debates. They had hoped more viewers would mean more resources, bigger sponsorships, and a chance for players to finally get their due. Instead, many of the conversations they found online revolved around vitriol, heavy accusations, or heated tribalism. The overshadowing question became, could the league unify fans under shared respect for the game, or would these factions remain at odds? The WNBA's historical struggle. To understand the depth of these controversies, one must look back at the league's early days. The WNBA was established in 1996 with significant backing from the NBA, but it never exploded into the mainstream consciousness like men's basketball. For 2 decades, hardcore fans faithfully filled arenas, but TV ratings stayed modest. Players, coaches, and executives poured their hearts into building something that extended beyond the sport itself, an incubator for social justice, equality, and women's empowerment. However, lack of widespread interest and revenue forced the league to rely heavily on subsidies. The NBA's financial cushion kept the WNBA afloat, allowing it to endure slow but steady growth. Over the years, talk of expansion and bigger paychecks percolated, but never reached the levels players hoped for. Many found higher salaries overseas. A good number of fans believed that if only the world witnessed how talented these athletes were, the league would flourish. Then came 2023 and a perfect storm of celebrity players, cultural moments, and collegiate hype. People who had never cared before suddenly had strong opinions. Now, the WNBA was in the limelight, exactly what many had yearned for. But that spotlight brought scrutiny. Critics argued that if you want mainstream attention, you must accept everything that comes with it, including blunt opinions, internet jesters, and yes, trolls. This phase of growth tested the WNBA's brand identity. Would it remain a close-knit, socially conscious league where fans were expected to show unwavering support and positivity? Or would it evolve into a major sports entity that thrives on debate, conflict, and thick skin, like the NBA or NFL? If some players were uneasy about fans criticizing them, how would they react when faced with truly unforgiving corners of the sports world? The tipping point. Worry with each passing day, more voices emerged. Fans urging the league to handle these controversies swiftly, and stars urging fans to show more decorum. The fear among league executives was palpable. What if a single, inflammatory comment by a high-profile player caused a mass exodus of these new supporters? Could the WNBA afford to lose them? Caitlin Clark's fans, for instance, had added millions of fresh sets of eyes. They were enthralled by her sharpshooting theatrics and had grown accustomed to a sports culture that thrives on playful trash talk. If they continually felt unwelcome or labeled as ignorant by certain players, they might just tune out. A tipping point loomed if the negativity overshadowed the love of the game. Some analysts theorized that Commissioner Kathy Engelbert might need to step up in a big way, enforcing guidelines around public discourse or arranging better media. Training for players? Others insisted that any attempt to micromanage how athletes speak would only aggravate the situation, making the WNBA look controlling and out of touch. Balancing the need for free expression with the fear of driving off new fans became a precarious act. More than a few watchers drew parallels to similar controversies in men's sports. Rivalries often boost ratings, fueling unforgettable showdowns. But for every major men's league, the line between showmanship and open hostility is razor thin. The WNBA's challenge was that it had never truly navigated these stormy waters on such a large scale. Some saw it as growing pains. Others warned it could irreversibly damage the league's prospects if handled poorly. Overseas temptation's one wildcard that rarely surfaces in the NBA is the allure of bigger paychecks abroad. Throughout the WNBA's existence, plenty of star players have traveled overseas to countries willing to pay them far more than stateside teams. In places like Russia, China, or Turkey, top women's players can earn sums that dwarf WNBA salaries. So, what happens if the tension in American women's basketball intensifies? Will the game's brightest talents decide it's simply not worth the drama? Imagine if, for instance, Caitlin Clark, upon turning pro, discovers she can make millions more and avoid social media scrutiny by heading overseas. Though that scenario might sound extreme, it's not out of the question. Basketball is a global sport, and if US fans and media turn every game into a swirling storm of conflict, some athletes might choose a more lucrative, less fraught path. Shakira. Austin's comments in particular made people speculate. If she was tired of dealing with negativity in the WNBA, how might she feel about playing in a league that just wants her talent on the court and leaves the drama behind? Of course, there are downsides to playing abroad, like being far from family and friends. But money talks, and peace of mind can be priceless. If multiple players opt to leave, the league's depth and star power could be compromised. Some fans wave off those fears as overblown, insisting that stateside competition is where true glory lies. Others believe the threat of mass departures looms in the background. The question remains, can the WNBA offer an experience and a paycheck compelling enough to keep top-tier athletes from seeking greener pastures? Where does the WNBA go from here? With drama swirling around every corner, the WNBA finds itself at a crossroads. On one path lies the promise of growth, more eyes on the league, more money, more brand deals, and the potential for female athletes to shine brighter than ever. On the other path is a new reality filled with volatile debates, harsh social media scrutiny, and factional divisions among fans, some championing the players no matter what, others demanding the right to cheer, jeer, or question as they see. Fit, Caitlin Clark, and Angel Reese might have inadvertently opened Pandora's box by igniting a rivalry that put the spotlight on women's basketball like never before. Shakira Austin's comments about ignorance and trolls stoked those embers into a fire. Add to that the broader cultural conversations about race, representation, and fairness, and you have a league grappling with issues far beyond the hardwood. Will the WNBA emerge stronger, forging a new identity that melds competitive grit with respectful discourse? Or will it stumble under the weight of controversies, risking the loss of precisely the fans it has worked so hard to attract? As it stands now, no one can say for sure. One thing is certain: the next few seasons will be pivotal. Each tweet, each interview, each game could shift public perception, drawing people closer or pushing them away. For viewers and fans, it's a spectacle that's part athletic competition, part cultural reckoning. Perhaps the biggest irony is that for all the tension, more people are talking about women's basketball than ever before. Sometimes, conflict is the key to lasting change, but whether that change is beneficial remains an open question. So, the next time you tune into a WNBA matchup, think about what's at stake. Could these struggles be the forging ground for a new era of women's sports, or will they become cautionary tales that keep the league from fulfilling its potential? The future, as they say, hangs in the balance, and everyone is watching.